it is presumed that you own or have access to that river. The problem is that it's moving. And you say, I own this water, and it's moving off my property. Okay, that's your water now. I own this water, and then it's moving, and that just kind of keeps going. And so you keep changing the property. And so it is a difficult thing to identify as to which water I own. But essentially, you do own some of that water as it's crossing, and you do have a reasonable expectation that it be clean. Now, in the United States, we have all sorts of agencies, the Environmental Protection Agency, which is presumably there to make sure that our air and our water are clean. However, when we have an agency to do that, it turns out that those agencies frequently sell the right to pollute a certain amount. I know you have this big factory, and we're going to let you pollute up to here. And so if you try to file a lawsuit against that company for pollution, they will hold up a piece of paper and says, no, the government says I can do this. And you lose any judicial action that you may be able to take. What we would like to do is to eliminate the EPA and reform our judicial system, much like they do in England. In England, if you and the people downstream from you detect pollution, you can join together in a class action suit and file a lawsuit against the person or company doing the polluting. And you can make it financially disadvantageous for them to do so. In other words, it's much cheaper to keep the water clean in the first place than it would be to have to clean up the water later and pay out all the damages. England has the cleanest air and water in the world because people can claim the water, even though it's moving, as property, and they can file lawsuits against people who pollute.
I want to smoke, I don't want to smoke. I want to be with a smoker, I don't want to be with a smoker. That's a very commonly discussed.
Yes, again, these are practical issues. And it all boils down to property. If you purchase a home and you live there, you have a right, even if it's only real estate, you have a right to decide what color to paint the walls and whether or not you are going to smoke in your home. And if you have friends and neighbors that want to come over and visit, you are not obligated to let them smoke because they have a right. They don't have a right to smoke when they are on your property. Now the question becomes, how about when we are out in this communal property, when you're out on the sidewalk? Is that smoke, causing enough harm where it actually damages your air? And what air do you claim as property? Now, again, the question is very difficult, but ultimately it becomes a property ownership issue. The government has chosen to step in many cases and tell business owners that the business owner cannot allow smoking. And in many cases that may be legitimate because the business owner may not own that business, the property. They may just be leasing the property, and whoever the owner is can set the rules. But I think that in most cases a business owner and a property owner should be allowed to decide whether or not their patrons smoke in their establishment. If I've got a country western bar, where everybody's coming to drink beer and smoke, that's my clientele. You're not required to go there, but I think that other restaurants could say, we're serving this really fine cuisine. We want people to be able to smell the food, not to smoke. Therefore, in our restaurant, we've decided that this is a non-smoking establishment. And if you want the food, you can come in and eat the food, but you've got to leave your burning cigarette outside. So, again, it all boils down to property. And the question is, who owns the property? Who establishes the rules for that property? If someone is standing on a soapbox and they are saying things which are racist, sexist, homophobic. Most of us don't like that kind of language. We don't like those ideas. And the first reaction that most people have is to call the government and have the government come and drag that person down off of their soapbox, thus violating their freedom of speech. That's the easy way. How would you take responsibility? Can you violate someone else's freedom of speech even if you don't like what they have to say? No, they still have a right to say it, even if it's reprehensible. The responsible thing to do would be to set up a soapbox nearby and stand there saying, look at this person, they are being racist, sexist, homophobic, and I think that's ludicrous. And this is why these ideas are bad. Take the responsibility to refute the ideas. Exercise your freedom of speech rather than asking the government to violate someone else's freedom of speech.